Hi everyone, welcome to one more session of our Education Summit. My name is Anna, I work for Aussizz Adelaide, and today's session is about teaching programs, skills assessment, and future state pathways in Australia. We are joined by Vaishalee, our registered migration agent working for Aussizz Adelaide and Gold Coast. She likes to completely dedicate herself to facilitating information and the application process for her clients. She believes in effective and efficient work that can lead applicants to achieving their dreams of permanent residency in Australia. Vaishali will be taking questions after finishing her presentation, so please post them in the chat box and she will be able to help you out in the end of this session. Also, we have some very exciting giveaways for our attendees. We want to take the session deep and interactive, and we encourage questions and feedbacks. We have a bumper crash prizes to claim for the ones who leave the most descriptive reviews under this Facebook post. I will share with you now so you can have a look how it looks like on our Facebook page. All you gotta do is to tag your friends and Aussizz Education Summit 2022 in the comment section along with your feedback. I will leave the link for this post in the chat box so you can access it. Also, the most participative audience members from the chat box are eligible for free giveaways such as free PT coaching, IELTS coaching, PR consultation, and more. Thank you so much, Vaishali. How are you today?
Good, thanks, Anna. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'll just request that you start your presentation.
Yeah, sure. I'll do that now. Okay, thank you.
Mm.
Hi, viewers. Of course, you are aware we will be discussing the most prominent teaching occupations here. The occupations which are highly available on list, which are highly available for PR pathways, which are also good for your career. These, of course, are one of the. Teaching, of course, is one of the noblest occupations. As I said, not in terms only of a PR, but it's a good rewarding career in terms of money, in terms of job satisfaction, in terms of having a sense of giving something to the community. It has so far always been highly available on PR occupation list. It is also available in every state. So not only just the PR list, but when it comes to finding job opportunities, teaching occupations are the most popular ones. States are giving grants to residents. So even when you become a resident, this career is worth pursuing for. Now, in today's session, we will be discussing the roadmap to skill assessment and future visa options available that take you take you on the journey until you become a resident here. So let's start with the requirements for skill assessment first, and then we will discuss what state will be available for these main teaching occupations. I would just like to share PPT with you so that we can be on the same page.
And we have a few more sessions coming up today, so I will drop the links for them as well so you all can join once we are finished here. And make sure you write down your questions on the comment box so Vaishali can get back to you in the end of it. Yeah, there we go. You can start, Vaishali. Thanks.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Vavish. All right. So the most popular teaching occupations or the most prominent ones are as listed here. Now these occupations, exact core teaching, they are available on the medium and long term list. To name them, they are early childhood, pre-primary school teacher, primary school teacher, middle school teacher, secondary school teacher. We have teachers occupations for special needs, hearing impairment, sight impairment, and special education teachers. These all occupations have always been so far on the medium and long term list, which means there is a high chance if you choose these courses, it kind of works best for your PR pathways. Now, there are a few other occupations as well, which we won't be discussing much in detail, but just to let you know, there are a few available on the short-term list or regional occupation list, which are, as you can see on the screen, vocational education teacher, which includes trades and non-trades, which includes private tuition, such as art teacher, dance teachers, music teachers, or private tutors who take private tuitions. This is also one of the most popular occupations here, because we have seen many applicants applying for this occupation, especially those who have been taking private tuitions, of course, once you meet the skill assessment requirements. And then there is this TESOL teacher, which is teacher of English to speakers of other languages. The course is highly in demand. If you are able to find employment once you finish the course, this is also an occupation worth considering. Now, the occupations which are available on medium and long term list, which includes pre-primary, secondary, middle school teacher, special needs teacher, etc., they are assessed by Australian Institute for Teaching and School Leadership, which we all know by AITSL. These occupations will be assessed by AITSL, and the rest, which we discussed earlier, which are on short term list, they have a different assessment body. Now, assessment is a separate thing, separate from registration. All teachers who are planning to work in Australia as teachers need to be first registered in a particular state. Every state or territory has their own registration requirements. So applicants, once they complete the relevant qualifications, they register in a particular state and then they apply for skill assessment. The requirements are somewhat similar, but there are other different requirements as well. So registration leads to a skill assessment, of course. Let's quickly discuss about the first occupation here, early childhood pre-primary school teacher. Now, these are the skill assessment pathways or skill assessment requirements. Applicants need to have a minimum 4 years of full-time education, which is at an Australian bachelor level framework or higher. So bachelor or master is required, and the study has to be at least 4 years before you are eligible to apply for this occupation. Now, out of these 4 years education, at least 1 year needs to relate to the pre-primary school teaching. So at least 1 year qualification has to be exactly in pre-primary school teaching. That is called the initial teacher education. They should have completed at least 45 days of supervised teaching practice. We have seen many applicants, not in Australia, but especially overseas, who completed all the requirements, but who were lacking in this supervised training duration. If it is anything less than 45, the supervised practice may not qualify you to apply for a skill assessment. Now, for pre-primary school teachers, the age range is from birth to 8 years. That is why it is called early childhood. So this supervised practice allows you to work with students of this age group, which is a very good practical experience. That is why they need the supervised practice. Now, the other qualifications which contribute to this 4-year study requirement can be anything above a diploma or associate degree, which is Australian Qualification Framework 6. For example, just to clear it a bit, if you already have 2 years bachelor's earlier, and then if you study a master's that is in early childhood teaching, or let's say bachelor's, combining these two studies, you are eligible to apply for a skill assessment. So total 4 years and at least 1 year of co-teaching education. AITSL does not assess short courses. Anything which is less than 1 year full-time study is definitely not assessed by AITSL. The same goes with primary school teacher. The difference between early pre-primary and primary is age range of students. 5 to 10 years of age range is considered eligible for primary school setting. Applicants, the rest of the requirements stay the same. Applicants should have 4 years full-time qualification, at least AQF level 7, which is bachelor or higher. 1 year of these 4 years has to be in primary school teaching. That is called the initial teacher education. The supervised practice must be 45 days, and other higher education qualifications include diploma or higher. Again, it goes the same for all occupations. AITSL would never assess short courses which are less than 1 year of full-time study. Middle school teacher, now just to take you all through these pathways, pretty much the same, unless the only difference is, yes, the age range, and in some cases, maybe the supervised practice. So 4 years of total education, bachelor level at least, 1 year full-time qualification in middle school teaching, completed at least 45 days of supervised training. Now, the supervised training has to be with children of 10 to 15 years age range. That is the middle school setting. Minimum 10 days should be the upper primary age students, which is 10 to 12 years. And minimum 10 days of supervised training should be with the lower secondary school age students, which is 13 to 15 years. it is ensured when you study in Australia that you get similar placements there because they might be aware of the requirements. But you too need to make sure that the placements meet the skill assessment requirements. Same other higher education qualifications that contribute to 4 years study are diploma or higher, and no short courses to be assessed. Secondary school teacher, the age range is from 13 to 18 years. At least 45 days of supervised teaching practice required with one initial qualification. Has to be in secondary school teaching. 𝐸𝐈TSL won't accept short courses and other higher qualifications. Previous to the initial qualification can be diploma or higher. Special needs teacher, again, the requirements for all occupations which are assessed by 𝐸𝐈TSL will remain the same for the 4 years full-time courses. It has to be bachelor's. 1 year qualification has to be in a university or higher education, completed at least 45 days of supervised teaching with special needs students. If the study is now the study must include 1 year full-time in the special needs, which is comparable to Australian bachelors. And if the study is a component of the initial teacher qualification, then the supervised teaching practice must be completed in a special needs setting. Of course, the supervised practice matters a lot because that is what prepares you to work in a similar environment. And that is why 𝐸𝐈TSL will mainly focus on the supervised practice. Once we go ahead, you will see that one of the documentary requirements definitely emphasizes on the nature of your supervision, supervised practice. They will ask a confirmation from the institute where the supervised practice was taken, what was the age range of students. So that is what decides whether you are eligible to apply for this occupation or not. Same with teacher of hearing impaired. The supervised practice must be 45 days and with students in a school setting. Now, this supervised practice has to be with hearing impaired students. If there is a separate study taken to in addition to the initial teacher's qualification, then the special education study must include a 30 days of supervised teaching practice. So 30 to 45 days will be mandatory. Teacher of sight impaired, 45 days of supervised teaching practice with the practice being in a school setting where you have the impaired students, impaired applicants. Again, the same thing, they must include 30 days of supervised teaching practice if you have an additional qualification, which is the initial qualification in hearing impaired teaching. Special needs teacher, 45 days of supervised practice with in a school setting or in a setting where children are with special needs. Rest of the requirements will remain the same. You have to have at least diploma or higher in studied earlier, and then the qualification has to meet the initial level qualification requirements, which is at least a bachelor's. English language proficiency for all these occupations will remain at what is shown here. 𝐸𝐈TSL body accepts only and only IELTS academic results. They do not accept PT or other formats of tests. For if you are taking IELTS, it has to be 7 both in reading and writing, and a minimum score of 7 of 8 in speaking and listening. It has to be academic IELTS. Now, completion of at least 4 years of full-time study can also do. This study has to be taken in a country where the medium of instruction is English. That is Australia, Canada, Ireland, New Zealand, or United Kingdom, or the United States of America. So if all 4 years are studied here, then there may be a waiver for IELTS. Again, this is a discretionary thing. So if 𝐸𝐈TSL, despite having met the requirement of studying in an English-speaking country, if 𝐸𝐈TSL demands an IELTS result, you will have to appear for the test. The test must have been taken in the last 24 months before you apply for registration. For immigration purpose, IELTS or any other English test is valid for 3 years, but when it comes to registration or skill assessment, it is valid for 24 months. Now, the documentary requirements. When we apply for skill assessment, we will have to upload everything online. We need color scans of original documents, non-certified, If possible, scanned in 300 dpi passport identity page and the page opposite. So the entire passport front page must be valid. Of course, two additional identity documents from the list below, which includes birth certificate or national ID or any official photo bearing documents, which is your student ID or driver's license. If you have ever changed your name, we will need evidence of name change, birth certificate, marriage certificate, deed poll, etc. For initial teacher education, that is to prove that you have a qualification related to your nominated occupation, you need evidence of final award certificate, which is called testimonial or parchment. You need final academic transcript for each year for the initial teaching qualification. If you studied a course for 2 years, then we need transcripts for all these 2 years. And most importantly, evidence of supervised teaching practice, which is an official signed and dated document from the awarding university. As discussed earlier, it will include the dates that you took the supervised training, the setting where you took it, the age range of students you supervised. It's a detailed document. Whenever we start assessment, we always send checklists which have all the information available on the checklist. So you can just ask the uni if they send you a document which does not have this information included, you can just request them and they can present in your new one. For special needs qualifications, of course, the same goes with this occupation, award certificate, transcript for each year, and evidence of supervised teaching practice. Other higher qualifications, awarding certificate and transcripts. So initial qualification means the one which is into teaching, but to prove that you also have total 4 years of study, you need to prove your previous qualification, for which you need to present final award certificate, parchment, and the final academic transcript for each year. English language proficiency, as discussed earlier, you have to show that you have an IELTS result, if applicable. That is, if not demand, if you have 4 years of education in an English speaking country, you may not need to provide it. But if AITSL demands, you still need to provide the result. COVID-19 evidence requirements, that is for the time being when the pandemic is in effect, we usually have to provide this letter from institute if there is any change in supervised practice. So if the supervised training or course was affected by the pandemic, you have to have a confirmation from the letter which has all the required details mentioned on them. Scanned documents must be in color and scans of originals. They do not accept certified copies. You need to make sure that they are not scanned by the CAM scanner. It usually delays the application. Now, these were for the prominent occupations, which we will be discussing further again. But because we mentioned some other teaching occupations as well earlier, which appear on the short-term and regional occupation list, the skill assessment is mainly done by VETASYS, Vocational Education and Training Assessment Body. This includes vocational education teacher, non-trades, art teacher, or the private tuition teachers, which includes dance, music, art, private tutors, teacher of English to speakers of other languages. And the vocational education teacher with trade specialization is assessed by the Trade Recognition of Australia. The trade assessment or the non-trades occupation or any other occupation which are assessed by VETASYS will require at least a bachelor level or higher qualification with 1 year of post-qualification employment. So bachelor and then 1 year of employment. This 1 year, at least 1 year has to be taken in the last 5 years. When you apply, you need to make sure that you have 12 months of employment present in the past 5 years before application. The employment has to be at least 20 hours per week. So casual is fine, part-time is fine, casual as long as it is at least 20 hours. It does not have to be continuous, but at least 12 months of employment should fall within the last 5 years. And only those weeks which has 20 hours every week employment will be considered for skill assessment. It goes without saying that the employment has to be highly relevant to the nominated occupation. Same requirements with art teacher, private tuition. So all private tuition occupations will require bachelor level and then 1 year qualification taken in the last 1 year employment in the last 5 years. Now, sometimes if there is the qualification is not in highly related field, for occupations like this dance teacher. If you have if the qualification is not related, you must have 2 years of post qualification employment instead of 1 year. Working hours have to be 20 hours every week. And if you have an additional AQF certificate for example, you don't have a qualification related to dancing, but if you obtain a certificate 4 level in dancing um, or dance tutoring, then the employment is reduced to 1 year. Now, this certificate does not have to be pre employment. It can be during the employment as well. As long as you have the certificate, the employment requirement will always stay 1 year. But of course, you need to have a previous qualification prior to starting your 1 year employment. If the employment has occurred before completion of qualification, then 3 years of highly relevant experience is required. In addition to at least 1 year in the past 5 years. So in total, it will be at least 4 years. Music teacher, it requires a bachelor's qualification, at least 1 year of post-qualification employment undertaken in the last 5 years, working 20 hours at least every week, and the employment has to be highly relevant. That means you should be tutoring as a music teacher only. If the qualification is not highly relevant, you need 3 years of post-qualification employment. This is reduced to 2 years if there is an additional qualification at a diploma level. And if the employment has occurred before completion of qualification, then you need 5 years in addition to last 1 year. So some occupations make it difficult for you to apply for if you don't have a relevant qualification, because the employment requirement will be a bit higher. And especially if the employment is pre-qualification. Private tutors and teachers, it requires bachelor's degree, at least 1 year post-qualification employment undertaken in the last 5 years, 20 hours every week, and employment highly related. If the qualification is not highly related, you need 3 years of post-qualification employment. If it is pre-qualification, then you need 5 years in addition to 1 year in the last 5 years. If you have an AQF diploma level qualification, the employment is reduced to 2 years. But for any occupation that is assessed by Vaishalee, minimum 20 hours a week is mandatory. Teacher of English to speakers of other languages, the qualification has to be at least bachelor's level with 1 year of post-qualification employment undertaken in the last 5 years. So the employment has to follow the relevant qualification. There is no provision of having a not related qualification in teachers of in the occupation teacher of English for other speakers. Now, for this occupation, Bachelor of Education from overseas or any simple Bachelor of Education would not qualify. You need to have studied core teaching courses which are for speaker of other languages. Vocational education trades is assessed by Trade Recognition of Australia, TRA, which requires at least Certificate 4 in training and assessment. And the requirement is slightly different. You need at least 3 years of post-qualification employment at at an appropriate skill level. That means it has to be full time here, and 1 year has to be in the last 3 years. The difference is for Vaishalee, you need only 20 hours every week. For Trade Recognition of Australia, you need full-time employment, which is at least 35 hours a week. The employment has to be highly related to the occupation. And if it is prior to qualification, it has to be 6 years of full-time employment. It is way higher. Now, these were the general assessment requirements for major teaching and teaching occupations which appeared on the medium and long-term list and on the short-term list. These were just the documentary and the eligibility requirements. But of course, if there may be some case-specific questions which we can answer when we actually begin the assessment, or if there are any complications, we can discuss them before starting the application. We need to ensure that we submit decision ready file to avoid any further delays, because the assessment bodies might take somewhere between 2 to 3 months, and there may not be any fast track provision available for skill assessment bodies like AITSL. In that case, we have to submit a decision ready file. Otherwise, whenever the request documents, the processing time may be really, really long because it goes in the queue once again. And now, just to be practical, employment figures in teaching industry. As I was saying earlier, this is a highly rewarding career. The data itself shows the employment in February 2020 was around 49,300 for pre-primary school teachers. But there is a rise, there is almost 300% change in the last 20 years. The secondary school teacher employment figures in 2020 were 149,300, and there has been a 29.5% change in the last 20 years. Now, this definitely means that the employment figures have gone up, except the pandemic period, but still, overall, right now there is a shortage. It may be because of lower migration, maybe because there are fewer students taking the course, maybe because it is a bit difficult to have skill assessment under these occupations, but these occupations currently are highly in demand. Now, national scale, this is just statistics. National Scale Commission data has provided some statistics that they are projected, the demand for these courses is projected to have to be strong in future. Nearly half of all education professional occupations will be having a strong future demand. This is a time to actually think about these careers. There are grants being offered, the courses are being promoted, there are ample of courses which our education counselors can explain more about. And then the only hurdle may be English requirements, because sometimes applicants find IELTS is a bit tougher exam than PTE, but fine, all it requires is constant practice. Overall, in the end, these occupations are really, really good to choose. Employers generally recruit school teachers with ease. That's the main thing. When you go and find employment, so having a qualification does not guarantee that you will be practically employed in that field. And that is why some people choose those courses where it is easy to find employment in field. But it is true for these occupations, the school teachers, the employers are not really fussy. As long as you meet the requirements of English and the supervised practice, they are recruited with ease. And this is what attracts multiple applicants. There are ample of vacancies available here. We go further. Now, these are all about the data, how the demand has risen over the past 20 years, and how there is a temporary skill migration shortage right now, which has resulted in an increase in demand for these occupations. Now, of course, because of this pandemic, because of border closures, the supply has been limited to this labor market, and that is why this is the best time to choose these careers. EOI figures, now this is only a very small figure here that is limited to 189. If I talk about 190 or 491 invites and the EOI data, it is a very long list which might take up more time. So just to keep it short, currently more than 700 EOIs are submitted for the early childhood and secondary school teacher occupations, that is for 189. Now these occupations appear on MLT SSL list, and these are the occupations which are available for 189 visa. Otherwise, there are the state figures are different. Number of invitations for 189 has been really low during the past 2 years, but of course that is why we may think of pathways for 190 or 491, which is easier compared to 189. Now, all the occupations that we mentioned earlier, which appear to be on medium and long-term list, are eligible for 189 visa. You can submit an EOI, but invitation will depend on points, which is very rare right now. It may not be wiser to rely on the 189 option at this stage. And that is why we will mainly discuss the state nomination pathways. We will see what occupations are available in which state as of now, and what every state in general demands. Once it is proven, or once you go through the checklist and you see that yes, fine, this is the state where this occupation is highly available, or this is where I have studied, you can see what the requirements of that particular state is, and then we can try for skill assessment and to meet the state nomination requirements so that you are eligible to submit an EOI for 491 and 190. Now, if we talk about the first state, South Australia, South Australia is open for these occupations for 190 and 491. Usually, they require 3 to 12 months of employment for SA graduates. For 491, they might require 3 months. For some occupations, they might require only 3 months for 190 as well. And 6 to 12 months for non-SA graduates. The best thing about this year's state occupation list in South Australia is that it is open for everyone. Those who have come from interstate, those who don't have long-term studies in South Australia can qualify for a nomination even for 190, provided they meet the employment requirements. There are certain waivers available for applicants with higher GPA. So GPA with at least 5 and 6 are eligible for 491 and 190. There is a discretion, of course. 190 may not be that easy even if you have a high GPA, but an employment definitely supports your application. Applicants living in outer regional South Australia also have a pathway, and they have some waivers available. For example, if you are living in an outer region and not working in the nominated occupation, you still may qualify for 491 or 190 after 12 to 24 months of employment. Certain occupations such as vocational education teacher are available only through the Talent and Innovators program right now in South Australia. But that means if you have 95 points, if you have a high paying employment, you can still submit an ROI, that is registration of interest, under this program. If we jump to Northern Territory, now there are different requirements for 190 and 491. We will keep it short because we have to accommodate all states here. For 190, generally applicants must have completed one or more qualifications in NT, lived in NT for a period of at least 6 months immediately after the date of completion, while holding a visa that allows full-time work, that means a work visa. And then they must have demonstrated genuine and sustained efforts. So if applicants have studied there for 2 years, they apply for work visa, wait for 6 months, and show the immigration department that yes, they have tried genuinely to obtain employment, which can be proven by your emails where you have tried to approach different employers, or you have tried to market yourself or ask for employment. This evidence can be included when you show that yes, you have genuinely tried. Other NT residents, those who have not studied here, they need to prove that they have lived in NT for the past 2 years consecutively, of course. They should, if they have any dependents, none of them should be staying in another state of Australia, and need to prove that they have full-time employment in NT in the eligible occupation continuously for the past 2 years. That is, of course, before applying for a nomination, and they need to show that the employment will still be available for them for the next 12 months. This can be shown by an employment contract, maybe. Now, for 491, the international graduates who are unable to live in the NT for next 6 months. So they complete 2 years course, but those who don't have an option of applying for a work visa, if this is their second course after 485, they may not be able to reapply a 485. That's where they may be considered for 491 instead of 190. Applicants who started living in NT prior to 1 July 2020, they have a different requirement. They need to prove that they have been residing in NT for the past 6 months, and they have 6 consecutive months of employment taken before they apply for a nomination. And plus, they need to show that they have a continuous employment for the next 12 months. Applicants who start living in NT after 1st of July, the residence period has to be 12 consecutive months. And then they need to show that they have worked in the nominated occupation for the past 6 months. So the requirement now is 1 year of residence and 6 months of employment for 190 in the nominated occupation and full-time work. For both 190 and 491, the position must be based in NT, and the employer must have a record of trading in the NT for the last 12 months, for at least 12 months. Now, this is a bit in detail here. We might ignore this at this stage, but just to let you know, in short, applicants who have been employed on a full-time basis for at least 6 consecutive months, and if their occupation is not an eligible occupation, which means which is not appearing on the list, the plus 190 nomination can still be an option for them, provided there is an exceptional and case by there is an exception if the employer has made genuine efforts to recruit locally and they have not been able to recruit any residents, any local people there, or there is a genuine need for the position in the business. They can include a letter, detailed statement, where they can show that yes, they have tried, but they could not fill in the position locally, and that is why they need this applicant. There is a chance of 491. Australian Capital Territory, now these occupations are included on ACE's list currently. We are not talking about the short-term occupations. We are mainly talking about the core teaching occupations here, which includes primary, secondary, middle school, etc. So these occupations are currently on the ACT list. For 190, now Canberra has its own metrics. They need, apart in addition to the points test given by the department, Canberra counts points separately, that is called Canberra metrics. You need to fit in this metrics and you need to be eligible once they calculate your score here. For 190, the nominated occupation must be on the critical skill list. They have their own critical skill list there. If you're a primary holder of 457 or 482, these are the employer-sponsored visas. You worked in Canberra in the nominated occupation by the sponsoring ACT employer for at least 6 months when you were holding this visa. If you are a holder of 482 or 457, your nominated occupation does not have to be in the ACT critical list. That's a difference. You are the majority or owner of an eligible registered business in ACT, there is another pathway open for you, small business owner category. The following for this category, the following business types are not eligible: subtenancy, rideshare, taxi delivery, courier services, etc. And if you are owning a small business there, your nominated occupation does not have to be on the critical skill list. You must have lived in Canberra for at least 6 months, and you must continue living until the date you are invited, and you have worked in Canberra for the past 6 months, minimum 35 hours per week. If you are self-employed, the taxable income was at least 1,000 per week in each of the 26 weeks immediately before you submit the matrix. You must have at least 12 months of ACT business activity on your ABN, and you need to sign a stat declaration. That's just a documentary requirement. The English score needs to be according to their standards. If it is mentioned that you need proficient or superior English, you must have it, unless it's an occupation of chef or unless it's a levels 3 to 5 skill level occupation. For overseas applicants, there are a few occupations open. The nominated occupation must be on the ACT critical list. You are working full-time in the nominated occupation. ACT job offer, you have a full-time job offer, which is available for at least 2 years once you come here. And the employer in ACT must be a medium to large Australian enterprise, which must have at least 50 employees, and the business must be actively trading in Canberra. It is employer's duty to show that the position is relevant to the business, and they could not find any replacement from the local labor market that is to be proven by the employer. For 491 metrics, you need to prove that either you have an occupation which is listed on ACT critical list. If you are a primary visa holder of an employer-sponsored visa 457 or 482, the occupation does not need to be on the critical list. And you are also eligible if you own a small business here. Again, the small business does not include subtenancy or taxi, delivery, courier services, etc. You must have lived in Canberra for the last 3 months and continue until the date you are invited. And your 3 months, you must have worked at least 3 months full time in any occupation, which is minimum 20 hours every week. Sorry, I said full time. It has to be 20 hours every week for 491. For self-employed, the total taxable income was at least $520 per week in the past 13 weeks, which is past 3 months. And your business must have sustained in ACT for the past 12 months. Again, the English requirement is same unless it's an occupation of chef or skill level 3 to 5. The English requirement is proficient or superior. For overseas applicants, the same requirements are here. You must be working in the full-time occupation, full-time employment in the nominated occupation. You must have at least 3 years of full-time postgraduate work experience in the nominated occupation. And this experience must be assessed as relevant by the relevant assessment body. You must attach an employment statement explaining the research undertaken and confirming that you are employable in Canberra. You must have some job opportunities which you can see advertised, or where you can prove that yes, this occupation is or this position is available in this part of ACT. English requirements: proficient or superior English, unless you are passport holder of UK, USA, Canada, New Zealand, or Republic of Ireland. The business thing, your business must have actively traded in Canberra for the past 6 months. And this is for the small business owner pathway in Canberra. The business has a minimum turnover of at least $100,000 for the past 6 months. For 190, the business must be paying you a taxable income of 26,000. This is half of what is usually advertised by the threshold income for 1 year. 53,900 is the threshold taxable income for 491 visa or 191 visas. That is cut to half, 26,000 taxable income for 6 months. And if you are applying for 491, you need to prove that the taxable income you earned from the business was 13,000 Australian dollars in the past 3 months. You also need to show that you have employed at least one Australian citizen or permanent resident or eligible New Zealand citizen for at least past 13 weeks, which is 3 months, and the employment duration must be minimum 20 hours per week. Let's jump to New South Wales. These occupations are currently available in New South Wales special school, special education, secondary school, primary, and early childhood. For 190, applicants must be currently residing in NSW, and either they have genuinely and continuously resided in NSW for the past 3 months, or have gained an employment in USA NSW in the nominated occupation, which is minimum of 20 hours per week, but which has a long-term capacity which will continue in future. Again, these are only the eligibility requirements. Once you meet them, you can only submit an EOI, but the invitation will depend on points. These occupations are currently open for overseas applicants as well. It goes without saying, invitation will always depend on points in NSW, at least for now. So you can submit an EOI and have to wait until you are selected for a nomination. There are options for 491. There is stream 3, where your occupation needs to be on this combined occupation list, and you must have been living and working in the nominated occupation in a designated regional area of NSW for the past 12 months. The employment has to be minimum 20 hours every week. Stream 2, which is for NSW regional area graduates, they must have completed study in the past 24 months, where you studied in a regional area where you can claim points for regional education, and your qualification is assessed as closely related to the nominated occupation. So your qualification should relate to the occupation you are applying for. In case of teaching, of course, the occupations like primary, secondary, middle school teaching, it goes without saying that 1 year has to be in teaching, co-teaching. Stream 3, this is for those who have not studied in NSW or not been residing in NSW. Applicants must hold a valid skill assessment for the occupation that is on their list. There are regions, there is a preferred regions occupation list. You need to check which region has this particular occupation available, and then you can apply accordingly. You must have a positive skill assessment for that occupation. So the nomination process is, you can submit an ROI, that is EOI, and then registration of interest. There is an online form to submit an ROI, and there are certain submission windows throughout the year. For this financial year, 2021 and 22, the first window was in August, October, January, and the next one coming in March. Those who have not been able to submit their ROI in January, they can submit in March. Tasmania, just a quick overview. For employment, for 190, you must have studied for at least a course which was registered for at least 92 weeks, which is almost 2 years. You must have lived in the state for 2 calendar years. You need not be employed in the skilled occupation, but it is good if you have found a skilled employment. That will definitely support your application. The study that you do in Tasmania does not have to relate to the occupation, but a relevant skill assessment will, of course, be highly regarded. Again, as I said, employment is not a minimum requirement for this category, but if you have been employed for more than 3 months in a skilled occupation for a business which has successfully operated in Tasmania for the past 12 months, you will be preferred. Category 2, working in Tasmania, you must have worked in Tasmania for the past 6 months, full time, at least 35 hours every week, and the employment must appear on TSOL, that is Tasmanian Skilled Occupation List. There are areas of employment in Tasmania that are not supported for nominating under the working in Tasmania category, where if you have worked in supermarkets, service stations, limited service restaurants, this employment would not qualify you for a state nomination. For 491, the study must be 1 year. This is the first pathway for Tasmania graduates. You must have studied at least 1 year, lived and worked in Tasmania for the past 1 year. If you are not currently in skilled employment, you must provide a career plan that will explain how your studies have increased your ability to find skilled work in Tasmania. This also includes areas that are unrelated to your Tasmanian study. Your study does not need to relate to the nominated occupation, but a skill assessment, relevant skill assessment will be highly regarded. Employment is not a minimum requirement again, but those who have found an employment in a skilled occupation for the past 3 months will definitely be given a priority, provided they are working for a business that has successfully operated in Tasmania for the past 12 months. Working in Tasmania, you must have worked in Tasmania for 6 months prior to submitting your nomination application. You don't need to be working in the nominated occupation, but it has to be a full-time employment, which is 35 hours every week. And if your employment is in TESOL, Tasmania Skilled Occupation List, you may be eligible for nomination in just 3 months instead of 6 months. Now, your employer, whoever you are employed with, must have actively traded in Tasmania for the past 12 months. And employment in positions classified as ANSCO level skill or 4 will not be eligible for the nomination unless you could prove that the employment is located at least 50 kilometers away from a populated center or center of more than 5,000 people. It is possible that they might consider you. If the occupation is associated with aged care or individual support, which includes personal care workers, you may be considered. If there is an evidence of prior related employment or experience, then also there is a chance that they might consider you even if it's a low skilled occupation in Tasmania. Now, this is for overseas applicants. Some occupations are open, for example, early childhood. You must have at least 3 years of post-qualification experience in an English language school environment, and you must show evidence that you have in detail research the Tasmania labor market. You need to prove, yes, there are vacancies available, there are job opportunities available in Tasmania. Nomination category 4, family in Tasmania. If you have someone closely, an immediate family member residing in Tasmania, the person has to be Australian PR or citizen for the past for a minimum of 12 months prior to lodgement of your application, and they must be currently residing in Tasmania. The immediate family member can be parent, brother, sister, child, aunt, uncle, or grandparent, and then they agree to support you and assist you in the process of gaining employment. Small business owner pathway, the last pathway in Tasmania. You must have successfully operated a business solely owned, no partnership possible in Tasmania for the past 6 months. The business, you need to prove that the business is able to give you a personal income that meets the minimum taxable income threshold, which is set by the department, 53,900 per year for at least 3 years. Franchises or partly owned business or passive business investment. So if you are not actively involved in the business, you are making only a passive investment, such businesses would not be acceptable under this category. Service stations, massage clinics, Uber driving, etc. is not accepted under this category. Victoria, currently they are only targeting the target sectors, which include health, life sciences, agriculture, digital, high-tech, etc. So there are not many possibilities at this stage. We hope things change soon there. Eligibility for 190 in Queensland. For 190, PhD graduates who have finished 100% of course in Queensland in the past 2 years are eligible for 190, provided their occupation is available on the instrument, which covers almost majority of the occupations that we discussed earlier. Skilled workers living in Queensland, so those who have not graduated from Queensland, not at least a PhD, but they have a full-time employment, minimum 35 hours every week for the past 6 months, also do qualify. They need to prove that this employment will continue for the next 12 months when they are invited for nomination. Businesses must have an office in Queensland, and a virtual office will definitely not be accepted. For 491, there is a pathway for master or bachelor graduates. If they have, they must have studied a master or bachelor at least in Queensland. If they have a GPA of 6 or higher, and if they have proficient English, they are allowed to apply after 3 months on the basis of part-time employment as well. Otherwise, the employment has to be full-time for the past 3 months. But for those who have graduated and have a GPA of 6 and proficient English, they are allowed to apply on the basis of 20 hours per week as well. Job offer they must have a job offer for minimum 20 hours per week for the next 12 months. Those who have not studied here, they must need to show that they have worked in the nominated occupation full time for the past 3 months, and they have an ongoing contract for the next 12 months. The businesses must have an office in Queensland. Virtual office is not accepted. And the last pathway in Queensland, small business owners. So if you have a business in Queensland, you must have purchased a business which has successfully run for 2 years. Before 1st of April 2021, you were allowed to buy a business which has traded for 1 year. After 1st of April 2021, the business must have traded for at least 2 years. You purchase the business with a minimum purchase price of $100,000, and you run that business successfully for the next 6 months. Home-based businesses are not allowed. Courier or cleaning businesses or petrol station franchisees or subleasing agents are not considered for this pathway. You need to show, or you need to actually successfully run the business for at least 6 months prior to submitting an EOI. You must be on a visa that allows full-time work rights. So if you have a student visa, you have still purchased a business, of course, you will not be considered. When you apply for nomination, you need to prove that you have full-time work rights. So either a work visa or a visa that allows you to work full-time. Whenever you purchase, you need to make sure the business has successfully traded, and the business must have a minimum of 2 years and at a turnover of 200,000 was proven. Have 100% ownership of the business. Partnership or joint ventures are not acceptable. You must run this business 6 months before submitting an application, and you must employ at least one employee who is an Australian resident or a citizen, and then they must be working a minimum of 20 hours every week. For both 190 and 491 nominations, they need to submit an EOI and wait until you are invited. Again, the invitation depends on points and the requirements. Now, these were, in short, the general requirements in every state. Things keep on changing. Things may be different after 6 months. So we have to make sure that you meet the current requirements whenever you apply for any state. We will quickly go through a case study or just an example. Let's say when we talked about the initial qualification and required qualifications, for example, we have a client from Brazil who studied MBA course in the UK, and now he's willing to pursue a career in teaching. So he comes to Australia, he does a 2-year master course in teaching, let's say secondary teaching. So his first 2 years plus 2 years in Australia make him eligible to apply for an assessment because he has total 4 years of study. And now he registers with a particular state in which he has studied, and then he applies for a skill assessment. Once he receives the skill assessment, he is eligible to apply for a state nomination. Another example, a student is from India and she studied a Bachelor of Education in India, which was a 3 years program. And now she enrolls in 1-year graduate diploma in early childhood in Australia. Once she completes the course, she has total 4 years of employment with 1 initial teacher qualification in early childhood. She's eligible for a skill assessment, and now she can apply for, once she meets the requirements of English, she can apply for a skill assessment and then state nomination. Third scenario, an applicant does not have any previous qualification, but she comes to Australia to study a 4-year Bachelor of Teaching, which is in secondary school teaching. Upon completion of the course, she registers with a teaching registration body, for example, in South Australia, and then she applies for skill assessment. The skill assessment body might or still wants to see that she has a better English proficiency. They ask her to do an English test, and then she does it, passes it successfully, and she applies for an assessment as a secondary school teacher. So this is how, in short, you have to prepare yourself for a skill assessment and then for state nominated visas. For state nominations, definitely you need to ensure that you are meeting all the requirements. If there are any waivers available, you can go through them. You can check with a migration agent before starting to apply. We help you understand all the requirements, not only for skill assessment, but even the future requirements or even the career scenarios once you are able to successfully gain your residence here. You can contact us anytime. Of course, these sessions are brief, so we may not be able to give you very, very detailed information, but we can discuss further. We can quickly go to the chat box here. I will see if we have any questions. If we have time, Anna.
We have a few questions and we still have time. So I will just read loud to you.
Yeah.
The first one we got from Commission. She's asking, how and what is the job market for the graduate diploma of teaching, secondary, and does it lead to PR? Also, what is the best state for studying Master of Teaching, secondary? I'll just ask you, Vaishalee, to turn on your camera as well.
Yeah, sure.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So graduate diploma of teaching, if it is 1 year, yes, it will be accepted, provided you also have a prior qualification for the past 3 years. So in total, you need a combination of 4 years of education, which is higher than a diploma or associate degree. With combining these 4, you can definitely apply for a skill assessment, provided you are meeting the supervised training practice, which is 45 days, and you have met the English language requirements. Now, when it comes to choosing states or choosing your Master of Teaching course, see, it just depends on what state you are in. You can still try to fulfill the requirements of that particular state. As we discussed here, I think I gave the scenario of requirements in every state. So you can just go through them. or maybe you can just visit an agent in Aussizz office in that particular state. They will explain once again. Now it's all territories, states and territories, so they have different requirements.
She's saying, can I show two masters, Master of Public Administration and Master of Teaching for 4 years of English, medium study in Australia for registration?
Yeah, that's correct. You can show this if if the entire education is in Australia, definitely. I think registration won't be an issue. As I said, when you apply for skill assessment, they still have a right to ask for a skill assessment. If they ask, you will have to provide an English certificate, but that is at the assessment stage.
Mm-hmm. We have a question from Anthony. He's asking, I'm currently running a master in the UK, but I did my bachelor in Nigeria. Do I need IELTS for skills assessment? And he also said, I have a bachelor in economics, a diploma in secondary education, and currently running a master program with 2 years working experience. What do I need to meet up with skill assessment requirements?
Okay, so I think this applicant is this applicant is overseas. So yes, he can combine the qualifications, and then he needs to see that the initial teacher's qualification, the one that you have in teaching, needs to be at least a bachelor level. So if you have, I think he mentioned graduate diploma, which is fine if it is 1 year, plus it had 45 days of supervised practice. And yes, he needs English because Nigerian study was I know the main language may be English there, but education from Nigeria is not considered for a waiver from English. So he will need to do an English test.
Mm-hmm. We have a question from Isha. She is saying, I have completed my Bachelor of Food and Nutrition and took art courses in my home country. I also have an experience as an art teacher back home. Can I work as a private art tutor directly in Australia and apply for PR without any additional courses in Australia?
Okay, now she can apply for skill because her bachelor's was not related. So private tuition, if the field is related to what you studied, then you need 1 year of employment for skill assessment. That can be done without English. Otherwise, you will need 3 years of employment post qualification. When it comes to working in Australia, you need to have a valid visa to work. So currently, if you are not able to migrate to Australia on this basis, let's say as an art teacher, because no state is currently open for migration from overseas, you will have to come to Australia, ensure that you have a valid work visa. Sometimes if migration is not possible, students come here on a student visa because that allows them part-time work, right? So at least while studying, they can work and meet the requirements.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Vaishalee. Kumisha, she's asking again, what are the closely related occupations for secondary teaching?
Closest related occupations. So, okay, for assessment, if you have a qualification in secondary teaching, the assessment will be as a secondary teacher only. But for certain states, might accept related qualifications, which include also primary teacher qualification or let's say middle school teaching. This can be accepted. Just giving an example, if it is South Australia, they need to match only first two digits. If the first two digits are matching, they will be considered a relevant qualification there.
Mm-hmm. She's asking by now, how many graduates are invited per round?
In what state? So
Yeah, it wasn't specifics.
we don't know what state. Are you talking about 189? Because the rounds are mainly related to 189. But then, as we said, there is not, the 189 has not been active in the past 2 years. So the invite number may be too low. I think I in this thing it was less than 70 so far. If she's talking about 189, if she's talking about states, the scenario is different.
Okay, if you could just write down Kumisha in the comment section and be more specific, Vaishalee will be able to reply to you soon. And we have a question from Vikram. It's saying, is there any hope for 189 for ECT occupation? In the last few years prior to COVID, even though the occupation ceiling for this occupation was in the 20s every year, 2000s every year, only 10% of applicants were invited. What are your thoughts on this? Do you think we will remain like this for the next 1 or 2 years? Or it could increase the invitations for 189.
Okay, now I think I missed the occupation. If you were asking about teaching occupations, then as I said, we don't have many hopes from 189. Of course, the migration is predicted to increase, but the main focus seems to be on state nominated visas or regional visas. 189 kind of remains unguaranteed. It's better not to rely and think of other options for a state nomination if you want to be quick.
Yeah, it's for early childhood
Early
teaching.
child teaching. Yeah. It's better to, whatever state you are in currently, better to see what the requirements of that state are. That will be way quicker rather than, waiting and wasting your time while waiting for 189.
We have a question from Sen. He has a bachelor in IT with 3 years of working experience, but now he has moved to teaching and have 1 year of work experience for 6+ grade teacher softwares. What are my chances?
Okay, if you could be a bit specific, what state he's in?
Yes, and if you can just write down which state you are at the moment.
Yeah.
We will get back to you soon. I will just jump to the next one while we wait. He said he's overseas.
Oh, with overseas, maybe there is a chance for NSW. If you have experience, maybe you can just drop an EOI for NSW state. It depends on what's your other overall total score. So you can calculate your age points, English, etc. There is a chance. There is no harm in submitting an EOI. Just do it. Meanwhile, if other states open for overseas applicants, you can meet the requirements. Currently, you can submit an EOI at least for NSW.
I'm leaving Vaishalee's email details here in the comment section as well, so you guys can get in touch with her for more specific questions. I'll read the next one. It's from Nish. He's saying, I have done a master's in applied mathematics and research experience from India. Last year, applied for partner visa and got provisional visa right now. First question, I still need to do Masters of Teaching to teach in school?
Yes, to teach in schools, because you need an Australian registration first. If you want to start new qualification, you need to register. You don't need a skill assessment, but you need a registration, and then you can start working.
Second question, do I need to get IELTS also for English proficiency, or education from India is enough?
No, education from India is not enough. He needs to do an English test, IELTS.
Third question, is it possible to enter vocational colleges and teach college students instead of pursuing course in teaching and going for school? So he would like to teach for VET courses, yeah.
VET courses, yes, but you should have, if it is trade course, you should have a certificate in training and assessment if this vocational education is related to trades. If not, you still need to have a bachelor related qualification, and then you need to have at least 1 year of employment so that there are chances of an employability. It just depends on what course you have, whether this employment is available in the state you are talking about, and if they are the employers are hiring international applicants at that particular time. You need to have full work rights and all.
He's saying he is in Victoria.
Okay, yeah. So employability is a completely different thing. Of course, employers are in demand. You just need to check what every employer will request prior to employing you. They might have certain experience requirements. They might have certain particular qualification requirements when it comes to vocational education.
We have another question. Since most teaching diploma courses are online, how does this help overseas teachers that intend to relocate to Australia?
Okay, now if you do the online courses, fine, you can do them. You can apply for a registration on the basis of your completion. But then when it comes to actually moving to Australia, only a registration or skill assessment does not offer any pathway. You need to ensure that you first have a visa which allows you to enter, and then you can start working here. Otherwise, you have to wait until states open for certain occupations. All these teaching positions are highly available for 189, but 189 is not a guarantee. Just wait until the states open further.
We have a question from Shaz. It's saying, hi, I have a master in financial maths in my country, but I am online primary maths tutor for UK students part-time. and doing private math tuition for international curriculum secondary. Also, I have 1 year experience in full-time maths teaching, international curriculum, secondary experience. I'm really interested in early childhood education or primary maths teaching. What are his options?
Okay, so when you say you're interested, that means I think you are. See, with your current experience, you can definitely get a positive skill assessment as a private arts tutor, a private tutor. But then based on this, you need to find a pathway so that you can come to Australia and start working. Otherwise, if you are interested in early childhood or primary teaching, you can come here to study these courses based on your experience. You can make an SOP that yes, you have more than 1 year of experience with private teaching. There is a chance you may be enrolled in a higher course, come here, study, and that makes your registration process easier if you have an Australian qualification.
Thanks, Vaishali. We have another question from Vikram. It's saying, prior to 21 and 22 program, early childhood teaching was not in most states' occupation lists. What do you think? Is there a possibility for this to come up again on the 22 and 23rd? What are your perspectives?
Um, it is expected to stay there because in practice, when we see the local labor market, teaching positions are highly available. There are many more increased vacancies here. And we have seen for residents also, they are offering many grants so that students are encouraged to pursue these occupations or these courses. So it seems, yes, the occupations are going to stay there for a long.
Mm-hmm. Anthony is asking, can I enroll in a master in teaching and earn a student visa to boost my career pathway?
Yes, definitely. If you are enrolled in a master of teaching course, yes, simultaneously, like this is the first pathway. Once you finish the course, you can apply for registration and skill assessment. While you are studying the course, if you work simultaneously as a private tutor based on your previous experience, I think this is the same guy who had previous experience, right?
Yes.
So if
Mm-hmm.
continues work, choose a state that allows part-time work. For example, South Australia. If you are enrolled, if you still are employed side by side, you create your second pathway. You don't have to complete the education based on your experience while studying. You can be nominated.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Vaishali. That was the last question here on the chat. I would like
Yeah.
to thank you so much for being with us here today and clarifying so many doubts. I have left Vaishali contact details in the chat box, and also I would like to request everyone to leave us a review on our Facebook page, and then you can get a chance to win cash prizes. Thank you so much. We have more sessions coming up in the next days, and we will see you there. Thank you, Vaishali. Have a good day. Thank you, everyone.
You all too. Thank you. Bye.